think basically there might be a strong case that supposed super fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence Crawford might not happen. The reason why I say this is because there's been loads of things that seems to be constantly getting in the way of the fight actually happening. Now the main thing is that the main reason why I think the fight might not happen is because obviously recently Errol Spence had to pull out of his fight against Pacquiao because of his torn retina in his eye. Before that, he had a car crash. Also, if you take into account that Pacquiao actually lost to Ugas, Errol Spence is going to have to get past Ugas as well. And on top of that, like the fact that they're both in two different promotional entities, like obviously Terrence Crawford is with Top Rank, and Errol Spence is with PBC, so they're both with two different promotional entities. How likely is it that this fight will happen? Because it just seems like every time we get somewhat closer to the fight, because it seems like there was talks that Errol Spence's contract is coming to an end, so there's a very strong chance that he's going to sign with the PBC. On top of that, there's going to be a purse bid, and the PBC, if they can actually outbid everyone else, and Crawford sees the money that they have and the money that he could be earning fighting the top welterweights, there's a very strong chance that he would have went over and crossed the street and went to PBC. But now, with everything that's going on recently, what's the chances of that actually happening? I think it's a very low chance of that actually happening. So in my opinion, it just seems like there's loads of stumbling blocks that are stopping this particular fight from happening. It's a fight that everybody wants to see, myself included. It's a fight that's very exciting. You've got Errol Spence, who's a pressure fighter. He's not overtly got a lot of punching power. He does hit hard because he gets the respect of his opponents with his punches, but he's not as explosive as, say, other fighters, in, like, for example, a Keith Thurman. He's not as explosive as a Keith Thurman. I actually argue that I think Terrence Crawford, pound for pound, actually hits harder than Spence, but Spence is just a fighter that likes to grind you down and likes to put it on you and likes to actually, in terms of a battle of attrition, he likes to break you down. So that style, which grinds fighters down, is obviously very effective. He's really good technically, and on top of that, he's got a lot going for him. In terms of his youth, his exuberance, the way he carries himself, he fights, even though he's a young fighter, he fights with the maturity of an older fighter. He seems like he's wise beyond his years. He's almost like a precocious talent. For example, the way he knocks people out, the way he is a pressure fighter, he's very patient and methodical in the way that he fights. So in my opinion, it's a very intriguing fight. It's a fight that I would love to see. Two of the best welterweights of their generation going at it. Who wouldn't want to see that? In terms of everything that's getting in the way of this fight actually happening, it seems like it's very unlikely that it will happen. It very much seems like it's almost like a Pacquiao Mayweather situation in a sense. Different networks, different promotional entities. Every time they get close to making a fight, something gets in the way, whether it's a car crash, a torn retina. What's the likelihood that you think that there is that the fight actually happens? And on top of that, there's a very strong likelihood that Errol Spence is just not the same guy anymore. The reason why I say that is because obviously his car crash that actually happened, something like that is very traumatic. It's something that's very difficult to come back against, and on top of that, it's something that it takes a long time for you to actually recover from. Your muscles, your tendons, you're never really the same. And the fact that he's got torn retina, I'm just wondering, I'm not speculating, but I'm just wondering, maybe that was connected to the actual car crash that he had. I mean, it's in the same eye that was red after he recovered from his car crash, so there's a very good chance that both of them might be connected. So yeah, there's just so much seems to be against this fight actually happening. It's the fact that he's even alive and is even thinking about fighting is a miracle. I mean, because that car crash that he had was no joke. I mean, it was no joke. He could have easily have died. Ironically, the thing that saved him in that car crash was the fact that he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. If he was wearing a seatbelt, 100% assured he would have been dead, because his ejecto seat was the thing that saved him, and if he had a seatbelt on, that would not have happened. So he would have definitely have died. The fact that he came back from that and he went on to beat Danny Garcia as convincingly as he did is hugely impressive, very impressive. So just taking everything into account, I think there's a lot going on, and there's one entity that we've not talked about, the fact that Ugas has emerged onto the world scene, and he's going to have to fight Ugas. Ugas is no joke. I mean, Ugas was a banana skin for Pacquiao. So like I would not be surprised if Ugas gives Errol Spence a very good fight and somewhat beats him. It could definitely happen. If that happens, then obviously it's going to be Ugas versus Crawford, but we're not going to see the tantalizing matchup, which would have been Crawford versus Spence. So in my opinion, there's so many stumbling blocks in the way of this fight from happening, from the promotional entities, from the torn retina, from the car crash. The car crash is a partial thing, because he has recovered from the car crash, to be fair. But to be fair, the lasting effects of that car crash might have caused him to actually rethink about his, like, he might not be the same since that car crash. So the fight might not have been as tantalizing as it would have been like if he didn't have the car crash. On top of that, the torn retina. On top of that, you got Ugas, who's this hungry lion who's waiting for his opportunity in the wings. I mean, there's a lot going against this fight from happening, and I would not be surprised if this fight doesn't happen and it goes on to become one of them fights that is like a what if situation. Like, what if Crawford fought Spence? Who would have won that fight? I wonder. Would have Spence's elite pressure fighting style been enough to beat Spence, or do you think Spence would have beaten him? It just would have gone down in the annals of history as one of them fights that would never have happened, and we never would have found out who's the best welterweight of this current era. Obviously Pacquiao's the king. Pacquiao and Mayweather were the kings of their previous era, but in terms of this particular era, this undisputed, it's not an undisputed fight because there's obviously Ugas has a belt, but these are consensusly seen as two of the best welterweights on the planet. It's just sad that they're both part of two different promotional entities. You got Crawford with his car crash, his torn retina. He's gonna probably have to fight Ugas next, who is by no means a very good fighter. With all of that taken into account, what would have happened if they would have fought? I mean, at this point in time, we're probably not going to find out, because of the fact that it's a very strong chance that this fight does not happen, because of everything that I've just mentioned, aforementioned. So yeah, because of everything that I've just mentioned, I think I'm leaning towards the fight not happening. And if it does happen, then it's going to happen when one of the fighters are past their prime, or both of them are past their prime, which is a shame, but it's just boxing. I mean, this is just the way it is. Even though I love the sport, there's a lot of things within the sport that does frustrate me. This is probably one of them. Big fights not happening because of crossing the street, so to speak, and all this other BS that comes with the sport. But yeah, that's my opinion about this entire situation. What's your opinion? Do you think the fight is going to happen? How likely do you think it is that the fight is going to happen? I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of history, I mean, these types of fights where like a fighter from the two best welterweights of a current era within American boxing are about to fight each other, historically they've always been good fights, very good fights to watch. And it's a shame that on this instance it's probably not going to happen, but you never know, it could happen. We might shockingly get the fight out of nowhere, but the way it's going right now with everything that I just mentioned, I think there's a very strong chance that it won't happen. And that's a shame, but it's just boxing. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Tell me what you think below. Tell me if you think the fight will happen, and like and subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot more content coming your way. Peace out.